This. Okay, so picture this. 1937. A book comes out. Just 5,000 copies printed initially. Seems pretty modest, right?
Yeah, hardly sounds like a blockbuster beginning.
Exactly. But then, boom, it just explodes. Edition after edition. It becomes this global phenomenon, one of the biggest international bestsellers ever.
And it wasn't about, making millions in stocks or some fad diet or anything like
No,
that.
something much, much simpler, but also kind of fundamental to, well, everything, to success.
And that's what we're diving into today, this foundational text and its core ideas about what the author called human engineering.
Human engineering sounds a bit technical, maybe.
A little, but it's not about circuits or bridges. It's about people. It's based on like 15 years of practical work, real-world experiments in social interaction, a kind of laboratory for human relationships.
Okay, and let's ground this right away. This isn't just like feel-good advice. This stuff apparently has serious implications for your career, for your financial success.
Massive implications. There was research done by the Carnegie Foundation, later backed up by the Carnegie Institute of Technology. That just blows your mind.
Yeah, tell us about that. It's pretty staggering.
Okay, so they looked at people in technical fields, right, like engineering. You'd think success there is all about knowing your stuff, the technical side.
Sure, that makes sense. Your skills.
But the research found that only about 15%, 15% of financial success came from technical knowledge.
Only 15. Seriously.
Seriously. Which means the other 85% that comes down to skill in this human engineering. Basically, how well you deal with people, your personality, your ability to lead.
85%. Wow.
Yeah.
That completely flips the script on what we usually think drives success, doesn't it?
Totally. And it's not just some modern idea. Think about John D. Rockefeller Sr. Back in his day, he famously said he'd pay more for the ability to deal with people than for, quote, any other under the sun.
He saw it as a purchasable skill, the most valuable one.
Exactly. It highlights the huge difference between just knowing how to do your job and actually managing the relationships around that job.
And here's the wild part, the kicker, really. For ages, nobody was actually teaching this 85% skill set.
Right. The need was clearly there.
Yep.
I mean, the book itself came about because of this big survey. They spent, what, 2 years and 25 grand back then?
Which was a lot of money then.
A huge amount.
Yeah.
They surveyed people in Meriden, Connecticut, asking adults what they most wanted to learn about.
And what came out on top?
Well, number one was health. No big surprise there, right?
Yeah, so-
Always relevant.
Sure.
But number two was people. How to understand them, get along with them, win them over, make people like you.
So a huge identified need, and when they looked for a textbook, something practical to teach this.
Noda. Zip. Nothing. Just a big gap where this crucial skill should have been taught.
So the author essentially had to create it from scratch, testing everything in the real world in that laboratory of human relationships you mentioned.
Yeah, and apparently the results were, well, almost like magic. Changed people's lives. Simple rules, but incredibly hard for most of us to actually stick to consistently.
Okay, so where do we start? What's the first big lesson from this human engineering playbook?
We start with maybe the toughest one, the one that fights every single instinct we have when someone annoys us or messes up.
Which is?
The absolute total futility and danger of criticism.
Okay. Yeah, that hits close to home. It's our go-to reaction, isn't it? Criticize, complain. Correct. It is. But the source material just hammers this point home. 99 times out of 100, people do not criticize themselves. They just won't accept blame. They rationalize. They find reasons, justify everything.
Constantly. And it doesn't matter how wrong they are, even in the most extreme situations. Think about infamous criminals like Two Gun Crowley.
The killer in New York. Big manhunt.
That's the one. Cornered, captured, sentenced to the electric chair. Did he say, I messed up? No, he said he was just defending myself.
Wow. Defending himself.
And Al Capone, the most famous gangster of his era. He saw himself as get this, a public benefactor.
A benefactor? Seriously?
Yeah, an unappreciated one, misunderstood, just giving the public what they wanted, in his view. And Warden Laws from Sing Sing prison confirmed this. He said very few criminals, even the most hardened ones, actually see themselves as bad people. They have justifications for everything.
Okay, so if even Capone rationalizes, what hope do we have criticizing, say, a coworker about a report error?
Exactly. The point is, criticism is futile. It just makes the other person dig in their heels, get defensive, and justify why they did what they did. They don't learn, they just defend.
And it's not just futile. You said it's dangerous. Why dangerous?
Because it wounds their pride. It hits that deep core need we all have to feel important.
Hmm.
When you wound someone's pride, you create resentment. Instant, often long-lasting resentment.
So you might get them to fix the mistake this time, but you've poisoned the well for the future.
Precisely. You've damaged the relationship. Modern psychology backs this up completely. B.F. Skinner's work showed rewards work way better than punishment for changing behavior.
Right, positive reinforcement.
And Hans Selye talked about our emotions. He said, as much as we thirst for approval, we dread condemnation. It's just wired into us. We shrink from being condemned.
History's full of examples of this backfiring, isn't it? Even with really smart people.
Oh, totally. Look at Theodore Roosevelt and President Taft. Roosevelt publicly criticized Taft, tore into him. What happened?
It split the Republican Party, led to a massive defeat.
Right. And did Taft say, you know what, Teddy, you were right? No. He just said, basically, with tears in his eyes, I don't see how I could have done anything differently. He couldn't internalize the criticism.
And the Teapot Dome scandal, Albert Fall, the Secretary of the Interior, went to prison over it. Huge public condemnation.
And did he ever repent? Nope, not for a second. His wife claimed he was the victim. Betrayed, led to the slaughter, crucified. Condemnation might serve justice, but it rarely changes the condemned person's mind about their own actions.
So who actually figured this out? Who learned to stop criticizing?
Well, Abraham Lincoln is a prime example, but he learned the hard way.
Mhm.
Early in his career, he was actually pretty sharp-tongued, wrote anonymous letters mocking political opponents.
Really? Lincoln.
Yep, and one time, it nearly got him killed. He wrote something particularly harsh about a guy named James Shields, and Shields challenged him to a duel.
A duel. Yeah.
They were literally preparing to fight when friends intervened. But that close call apparently changed Lincoln profoundly.
How so?
He pretty much stopped criticizing people from then on,
Ah.
adopted that famous malice toward none with charity for all philosophy. You see it later during the Civil War.
Like after Gettysburg.
Exactly.
Yeah.
General Meade wins this huge victory, but then lets Lee's army escape. Lincoln was absolutely furious. He sat down and wrote this scathing letter to Meade, just letting him have it.
But
But he never sent it. They found the letter in his papers after he died. Lincoln, in his wisdom, realized sending it would feel good for a moment, but it would just make Meade defensive, maybe even resign, and hurt the war effort. The resentment wasn't worth it.
incredible foresight. So, okay, if direct criticism is out, how do you get someone to change? Like, how do you get workers to wear their hard hats if just yelling about regulations doesn't work?
The hard hat example is perfect. George B. Johnston, a safety coordinator, faced this exact problem. Ordering them didn't work long term.
Right? They just take them off when you left.
So he changed his whole approach. Instead of ordering, he'd walk up pleasantly, friendly-like, ask if the hats were maybe uncomfortable or didn't fit right, show concern.
Okay, starting differently.
Then he'd gently remind them that the hat wasn't for him or the company rules, it was for their protection, their safety.
Shifting the focus to their self-interest.
Exactly. And compliance went way up. Resentment disappeared. It was all about framing it as a benefit to them, not just following a rule.
That makes perfect sense. And it leads right into the next big idea, doesn't it? This underlying motive for why that approach works.
It really does. If we're not supposed to condemn, what should we be doing instead? We need to tap into the core engine driving human behavior.
Which the philosopher John Dewey identified as
The desire to be important, that deep, fundamental urge for a feeling of significance, of consequence.
more than just wanting things, it's wanting to matter.
Precisely. It's what separates us from animals, Dewey argued. It's why people build monuments, write symphonies, strive for titles, or even, build houses way bigger than they actually need.
Like that family mentioned in the source, building a huge house just to show their status.
Yeah, a physical symbol of their importance. And this desire can manifest in really extreme ways. Think about Mrs. McKinley.
President McKinley's wife?
Yeah, she apparently craved attention so much she'd make the President of the United States sit beside her while she was getting dental work done, just so people would see him attending to her.
Wow, that's intense.
It really shows the power of that craving. And sadly, sometimes when people can't find that feeling of importance in reality,
They seek it elsewhere.
they might find it in delusion. The text mentions insights from a psychiatric physician who observed that many patients find a sense of importance in their insanity that they couldn't achieve in the real world.
Like the example of the woman who believed she was Leda Smith, and had married into aristocracy.
Exactly. Her real life was tragic, so her mind created a reality where she was important, where she mattered, even imagining having a new baby every night. It fulfilled that desperate need.
So the desire itself isn't the problem, it's how people try to satisfy it.
That's the crucial distinction. John D. Rockefeller sought importance by funding hospitals, impacting millions positively. John Dillinger sought it by becoming public enemy #1, yelling, "I'm Dillinger." Both were driven by the same fundamental urge, but channeled it in vastly different ways. Understanding that urge is key to influencing people.
Okay, so we understand the futility of criticism and the power of the desire for importance. How do we use that to actually make people, well, like us?
All right, that's the next step, moving from avoiding negatives to actively building positives. The source lays out 6 principles for this. It's about shifting focus from ourselves onto the other person, genuinely meeting their psychological needs. Principle #1 sounds simple, but maybe it's harder than it looks. Become genuinely interested in other people. It sounds basic, doesn't it? But think about how often conversations revolve around me. Genuine interest means really caring about them. Howard Thurston, the famous magician.
Yeah, huge crowds, 60 million people saw him.
He didn't just perform, he cultivated a feeling. He'd tell himself before every show, "I love my audience, I'm going to give them my absolute best." That sincerity, that genuine interest came across.
And Theodore Roosevelt did something similar, didn't he? With his visitors.
Yeah, incredible discipline. If he knew someone was coming to visit, whether a diplomat or a cowboy, he'd stay up late the night before reading about whatever subject that specific person was interested in.
Wow. That's real effort to connect on their terms.
It is. It shows you value them and their world. There's also that great sales example, Edward Sykes.
The guy who kept an account by talking to the clerks.
Yeah. Before talking to the owner, he'd always chat with the soda clerk, the sales staff, the unimportant people. Showed genuine interest. Later, when the owner wanted to drop his product, those clerks went to bat for Sykes because they actually liked him. His interest saved the account. That flows perfectly into Principle 5, which is kind of the flip side. Talk in terms of the other person's interests.
Exactly.
Once you've shown interest, you keep the focus there. You have to remember you're always competing with their own thoughts, which are mostly about themselves.
Like that story about the bridge party.
Oh, that's a classic. The host just listened for like 45 minutes while a woman talked nonstop about her trip to Africa. He barely said a word about himself, just listened intently and encouraged her.
And afterwards. She told someone else he was the most interesting conversationalist she'd ever met, all because he let her talk about her favorite subject, herself, and her experiences. It's amazing how well that works. And the business example, the baker trying to sell to the hotel manager.
Henry Duvernoy. Yeah, 4 years he tried selling bread, talking about his products, total failure, until he found out the manager's real passion was this group, the Hotel Greeters of America. Duvernoy switched gears, started talking enthusiastically about that, showing genuine interest in the manager's hobby.
And the manager bought the bread.
Almost instantly, became a loyal customer. Find their interest, talk about it, and the door's open.
Okay, so genuine interest, talking about their interests. What about making that first impression, that immediate impact?
Ah, yes. The next couple of principles are about those quick, visible signals of warmth and respect. Things people notice right away. Like Principle 2, smile. Seems so obvious. Obvious, but maybe underused. A genuine smile is instant communication. It says, "I like you, I'm happy to see you." Charles Schwab, a master of this stuff, claimed his smile was worth $1 million.
And he was probably right, given his success.
Probably. And it even works when people can't see you. Telephone companies actually train operators to smile when they talk.
Really? Why?
Because it literally changes the tone of your voice. It comes through. Makes you sound warmer, more engaged, more helpful. That department store slogan, "The value of a smile at Christmas," nails it. Costs nothing, creates so much.
Okay, smiling. Got it. What's next for immediate impact? This one is huge. Maybe the single most powerful tool. Remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language.
Ah, the name.
Yeah, that feels important.
It's core to our identity.
Eh.
Jim Farley, FDR's campaign manager, was legendary for this. He apparently knew 50,000 people by their first names.
50,000. How is that even possible?
Incredible memory plus intense effort, I guess. But imagine the impact when he met someone and not only used their name, but asked about their family or hobbies. It builds instant connection and loyalty.
There's that story about Nicodemus Papadoulos, too. That one really hits home.
Oh, yeah. Powerful. Most people just called him Nick. But this salesman, Sid Levy, made a point of using his full formal name, Mr. Nicodemus Papadoulos, and the reaction.
The man started weeping. He said nobody had bothered to use his full proper name in the 15 years he'd been in the country. It was like Levy acknowledged his entire identity, his heritage, just by using his name correctly.
Wow, that's profound. And even big industrialists use this.
Absolutely. Andrew Carnegie needed a big contract from the Pennsylvania Railroad. The president was J. Edgar Thompson. So what did Carnegie do?
He didn't just offer a low bid.
Nope. He built a massive new steel mill and named it the Edgar Thompson Steel Works.
Huh. Brilliant. So when the railroad needed steel, where do you think Thompson was psychologically leaning? Towards the mill, bearing his own name, of course. It's a powerful anchor.
Okay, interest. Talking their language, smiling, using their name. What's the last piece for making people like you? This section seems to be about sincerity versus something else.
Exactly. The last two principles tackle the difference between genuine connection and just, well, sucking up.
Right.
So, principle 4 is, be a good listener. Encourage others to talk about themselves. This is the counterpart to talking about their interests. You have to actually listen.
Yeah.
Charles W. Eliot, the Harvard president, said that giving someone your exclusive attention when they speak is incredibly flattering.
More flattering than compliments, maybe, perhaps, because it validates their whole world. It goes back to that fundamental truth. We are inherently most interested in ourselves. Remember the saying, a person's toothache interests them more than a famine in China that kills 1 million people. Oof. Harsh, but probably true for most of us deep down.
It's just human nature. So listening intently taps right into that self-interest, makes them feel heard and important, which leads perfectly to the final principle in this section, principle 6. Make the other person feel important and do it sincerely. This is the synthesis, right? Brings it all together. And that word sincerely is crucial. This is where the source tackles the flattery question head on.
Yeah, because couldn't all this just be seen as manipulation, fake niceness? It could, if it's not genuine. The book draws a sharp line. Flattery is counterfeit. It's shallow, often selfish, telling people what you think they want to hear, usually for your own gain, and people often see right through it. Okay, so what's the alternative?
Sincere appreciation. Finding something you genuinely admire or value in the other person or what they've done, and expressing that honestly, it's described as legal tender that all souls enjoy.
Legal tender. I like that. Charles Schwab was big on this too, wasn't he?
Absolutely. He believed appreciation was the key to unlocking potential, to developing the best in people. He pointed out how most people jump on mistakes, but say nothing when things go right. Sincere appreciation flips that.
And the story about the Connecticut attorney and the Packard car, that's just unbelievable.
Isn't it? It perfectly illustrates the power of genuine appreciation. He's visiting his wife's elderly aunt, makes a conscious effort to find things he can sincerely admire about her old house.
He compliments the house, how it was built with love, her cherished belongings.
Exactly. All genuine observations, sincerely expressed. And this elderly woman, likely starved for that kind of warmth and recognition, is so moved.
She gives him her prized possession, her late husband's mint-condition Packard car that's just sitting in the garage.
Spontaneously. He wasn't even a direct heir. But his sincere appreciation tapped into that deep yearning to feel valued, and she responded with overwhelming generosity. It shows how deeply people crave that feeling of importance.
Incredible. Okay, so we've covered how to build that initial liking, that connection. Now, how do we move into the trickier territory of actually persuading someone, changing their mind, winning them over to our way of thinking?
Right. This is where we get into the next big set of principles, 12 of them, in fact. It's about influence, but crucially, doing it without creating that resentment and defensiveness we talked about earlier.
12 sounds like a lot to remember. It is, but we can group them. Think of it in phases. First, how to just calm things down, avoid conflict. Second, how to make them feel the idea is theirs. And third, how to present your case persuasively. Okay, phase 1, emotional de-escalation. What's the first rule? This one feels completely counterintuitive. The only way to get the best of an argument is to avoid it. Avoid it. But how do you win if you avoid the argument?
Because you redefine winning. Winning the argument often means losing the person. You might prove them wrong intellectually, but you alienate them emotionally.
Ah, okay. Like that truck salesman, Pat O'Hare.
Perfect example. He used to love winning arguments with customers about why his trucks were better, and he lost sales because of it.
So what did he change?
He learned to just agree. If a customer criticized his truck and praised a competitor's, O'Hare would agree. He'd say, yeah, that competitor makes a fantastic truck. You can't go wrong buying it.
Seriously, he'd praise the competition.
Yep. It totally disarmed the customer, took the fight right out of them. Once they felt heard and validated, they'd often calm down and become more receptive to actually hearing about O'Hare's truck later.
Wow. Okay, so avoid the fight. What's next in de-escalation related to that? Show respect for the other person's opinions. Never say you're wrong.
Ah, oh, that's a tough one. You're wrong is so easy to say when you think someone is, well, wrong.
It's easy, but it's like throwing gasoline on a fire. It's a direct challenge to their intelligence, their judgment. It forces them to defend their position even harder. So what's the alternative phrase? Something much softer, much more diplomatic. Phrases like, well, look, I might be wrong. I often am. Let's examine the facts together. It shows humility, invites collaboration instead of confrontation. Yeah, nobody gets defensive if you start by admitting you might be the one who's mistaken. There was that lawyer who learned this the hard way.
Mr. S. Yeah. He bluntly told a Supreme Court justice, mid-argument, that the justice was wrong about a legal point. Mr. S. was factually correct, but he totally lost the room. The temperature dropped to zero, as the text says. He won the factual point, but lost the case because he humiliated the justices. No persuasion happened.
Okay, so respect opinions, don't say you're wrong. What if you actually are wrong? Then rule 3 is your best friend. If you are wrong, admit it quickly and emphatically. Don't hedge, don't excuse, just own it fast and fully. Why does that work so well?
It's disarming. The other person is often geared up for a fight or an argument, and when you just immediately say, yep, you're absolutely right, that was my mistake, I messed up, it takes all the wind out of their sails. Often they become more lenient, even protective.
Like the author with the policeman and the dog off the leash. Exactly. Instead of arguing about the park rules, he immediately launched into self-criticism. Officer, you've caught me red-handed. I'm guilty. I have no excuses. And the policeman's reaction.
He went from being an enforcer to being understanding. Since the author was already condemning himself, the officer's need to assert authority was satisfied, and he actually softened, suggesting the author just take the dog somewhere less visible. Admission turned accusation into alliance. Robert E. Lee did the same after Pickett's charge failed at Gettysburg, taking full blame immediately.
Powerful. Okay, last rule for setting the right emotional tone.
Begin in a friendly way. Seems obvious, maybe, but how often do we charge in when we're upset or want something?
Pretty often, probably. Woodrow Wilson had a great quote about this. If you come at me with your fists doubled, I guarantee mine will double just as fast. But if you come saying, let us sit down and take counsel together, we'll likely find a way to agree. Friendliness begets friendliness.
The John D. Rockefeller Jr. example with the striking miners is incredible here.
Isn't it? These miners literally wanted to hang him. Violence was in the air. He was facing extreme hostility.
And how did he start his speech to their representatives? Not with defiance or justification. He spent weeks beforehand just making friends among them. Then his opening words were filled with warmth. This is a red-letter day in my life. I am proud to be here. We meet here not as strangers, but as friends. And the effect.
It completely changed the atmosphere. His sheer friendliness and respect were so disarming that the miners eventually went back to work, even without getting the wage increase they'd fought so hard for. It's that drop of honey catches more flies than a gallon of gall principle in action. Okay, so we've cooled things down, avoided arguments, shown respect, admitted fault if needed, and started friendly. Now, how do we get them to actually embrace our idea or perspective? This is phase 2. Transferring ownership, making them feel like the idea, or at least the path to it, originated with them. People support what they help create. Makes sense. How do we start that process? With Principle 5, get the other person saying yes, yes, immediately. This is all about building momentum towards agreement, like the Socratic method, leading them with questions.
Exactly. You ask questions where the obvious logical answer is yes. Each yes makes it psychologically harder for them to suddenly switch to a no later on. You're aligning their thinking with yours, step by step.
Like the banker, Mr. Eberson, getting that hesitant client to provide personal info.
Perfect case. The client didn't want to fill out the form fully. Eberson didn't argue. He first agreed maybe it wasn't strictly necessary. Then he asked questions framed around the client's own benefit.
Like, wouldn't you want us to be able to contact your next of kin quickly if something happened to you?
Precisely. The client had to say yes to that. It's in his interest. Once he'd said yes to the underlying principle, protecting his family, providing the specific information felt like the natural next step.
Clever. Okay, so getting yeses. What's the core principle for transferring ownership? It's Principle 7. Let the other person feel that the idea is his or hers. This is the absolute linchpin. How do you do that without being manipulative?
It's often about planting seeds, asking questions, or presenting things partially. Remember Eugene Wesson, the sketch artist?
Who failed 150 times, yeah. His breakthrough came when he stopped presenting finished sketches. He brought the buyer unfinished ones and asked for help. Could you tell me how we could finish these so they'd work for you?
Ah, so the buyer gave input, made suggestions.
Exactly. The buyer essentially co-created the final product. He felt ownership, and he bought them immediately.
That's a great technique. And Colonel House did this politically with President Wilson. Masterfully. House would subtly introduce an idea to Wilson, maybe drop a few hints. Then he'd wait. Often, Wilson would later bring up the idea as if it were his own.
And House just let him.
Yep. House would even praise Wilson for his brilliant insight. He cared about getting the policy implemented, not about getting the credit. That lack of ego made him incredibly influential.
Okay, so let them feel it's their idea. What supports that? Well, you can't make them feel it's their idea if you're doing all the talking. So principle 6, let the other person do a great deal of the talking. Give them the floor. Let them articulate their thoughts, their needs, their objections.
Absolutely. People need to feel heard. The story of the salesman GBR who got laryngitis is hilarious, but illustrates this perfectly.
He lost his voice right before a huge sales meeting.
Yeah. Couldn't speak above a whisper.
Mm.
So what happened? The buyer just talked and talked and talked, laid out all his needs, essentially selling himself on the upholstery contract, while the salesman just nodded and whispered occasionally.
And he got the order.
A huge one. GBR joked that his laryngitis made him a better salesman because it forced him to shut up and listen.
Okay, so listen more, talk less. And while they're talking, you need to genuinely try to understand where they're coming from. That's principle 8. Try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view. Empathy, basically. Putting yourself in their shoes. Exactly. The book suggests a magic formula question to ask yourself constantly. Why should he or she want to do it? What's their motive? What's in it for them? Dean Donham at Harvard Business School took this really seriously, didn't he?
Incredibly seriously. Before a big meeting, he'd apparently walk around outside for up to 2 hours, just thinking, trying to map out the other person's perspective, anticipate their arguments, understand their underlying interest. He did the mental work first.
That's dedication. And complementing that understanding is
Be sympathetic with the other person's ideas and desires. Even if you don't agree, acknowledge the validity of their feelings.
how do you do that effectively? There's a magic phrase offered. I don't blame you one iota for feeling as you do. If I were you, I would undoubtedly feel just as you do. Wow, that sounds incredibly disarming.
It is, because it validates their emotional reality without necessarily agreeing with their facts or conclusions. It says, your feelings are legitimate. The impresario S. Hurok used this brilliantly with his temperamental opera star, Chaliapin.
The singer who'd always claim his throat was raw hamburger right before a show.
Yeah. Hurok wouldn't argue or pressure him. He'd rush over, full of sympathy. Oh, my poor friend, that's terrible. We must cancel the performance immediately. Your health, your reputation, that's far more important than the money.
Even though canceling costs thousands.
Yep. But that overwhelming sympathy, that focus on Chaliapin's well-being and pride almost always made the singer feel better, reassured, and eager to go on stage after all. Sympathy diffused the crisis.
Okay, fascinating. So de-escalate, transfer ownership. What's the final phase for winning people over?
Phase 3 is about the presentation and motivation, how you frame your idea and appeal to their deeper drives.
What do we start there? With principle 10. Appeal to the nobler motives. People like to think of themselves as fair, honest, and principled, even when their real motives might be more self-interested. So frame your request in a way that lets them feel good about saying yes. J. Pierpont Morgan had a thought on this, right? Yeah, Morgan observed that people usually have 2 reasons for doing something. The one that sounds good and the real one. Your job is to appeal to the one that sounds good. Like Lord Northcliffe getting that newspaper to stop using a photo he hated.
Exactly. He didn't say, I look bad in that photo, take it down. He wrote something like, please don't publish that picture anymore. My mother doesn't like it.
Ah, appealing to respect for one's mother. A much nobler angle.
Precisely. Or Mr. Thomas collecting overdue car payments. Instead of just demanding money, he'd appeal to the customer's sense of honor and fair play. He'd ask them to judge the situation fairly, as if they were the company president. Are we men or monkeys? He'd ask.
And that appeal to their integrity often worked.
Apparently, quite often, it allowed them to pay while preserving their self-respect.
Okay, appeal to noble motives. What else for presentation? Make it vivid. Principle 11. Dramatize your ideas. Facts and figures can be dry. Showmanship gets attention and makes the point stick. Like the newspaper, the Philadelphia Evening Bulletin, fighting that rumor.
Perfect example. The rumor was they didn't have much news, mostly just ads. Did they just publish circulation stats? No.
They did something much more dramatic.
They took all the reading matter from a single day's paper, compiled it, and published it as a 307-page book titled One Day. Talk about visual proof. It demolished the rumor.
And the cash register salesman, Jim Yeamans.
He used auditory drama. To show a grocer how much money his old system was losing, Yeamans literally threw a handful of pennies onto the floor. Clatter.
Making the loss tangible, audible.
Exactly. You are literally throwing away pennies. The drama got the grocer's attention and closed the sale. Sometimes you need that theatrical flair.
Okay. Dramatize. What's the final persuasion principle? It sounds exciting. It is. It taps into a powerful motivator. Principle 12. Throw down a challenge. Appeal to the spirit of competition. The desire to excel. Charles Schwab used this in his steel mills, right?
Classic story. One mill was underperforming. Schwab didn't yell or threaten. He visited at the end of the day shift, asked the foreman how many batches heats they'd made. The foreman said 6. Schwab took a piece of chalk and wrote a big 6 on the factory floor.
Just the number.
Just the number. Then he left. When the night shift came in, they saw the 6, asked what it meant. The day shift told them, the big boss was here, asked how many we made, wrote it down.
And the night shift's reaction.
Challenge accepted. The next morning, the 6 was gone. In its place, the night shift had written a big, bold 7. Competition turned the work into a game and boosted production immediately.
That desire to win, to prove yourself.
It's incredibly powerful, especially for people with spirit. Sometimes the best way to get someone to do something is to frame it as a challenge they can rise to. Like Al Smith recruiting Warden Laws for Sing Sing by saying it would take a big person to handle such a tough job.
Fascinating. Okay, we've covered making people like you and winning them to your way of thinking. What about the specific challenges of leadership, especially when you have to correct someone?
Ah, yes, the final section. Leadership. How do you guide, direct, and sometimes correct without triggering all that resentment we want to avoid? This is where the principles get really nuanced. Hashtag 4.1 corrective action without resentment.
9 principles here. Where does effective, non-resentful correction begin? It absolutely must start with principle 1. Begin with praise and honest appreciation. Always. This is non-negotiable if you want the correction to land well. The psychological anesthetic before the surgery.
Perfect analogy. You have to establish that you value the person first. Calvin Coolidge was apparently good at this. Before offering mild criticism of his secretary's letter writing, he first complimented her dress, called her attractive. He cushioned the blow with genuine appreciation.
Shows you see the whole person, not just the mistake. Lincoln did this too, even in high-stakes situations.
Especially then. Remember that letter to General Hooker? Before Lincoln delivered the really tough criticism, essentially accusing Hooker of insubordination, he packed the beginning with praise. Called him brave, skillful, ambitious, acknowledged his confidence.
So Hooker felt respected before being critiqued.
Exactly. It prepared him to hear the difficult part without immediately shutting down.
Okay, start with praise. But how do you transition to the critique without undoing the positive start? That's principle 2. Call attention to people's mistakes indirectly. And the key technique here is avoiding one specific word. Which word?
But
Because but cancels out everything that came before it, doesn't it?
totally. If you say, Johnny, we're really proud you raised your grades, but your algebra is still struggling, all Johnny hears is the criticism of his algebra. The praise feels insincere, just a setup.
So what's the alternative? How do you connect the praise and the area for improvement?
Try using and instead. Johnny, we're really proud you raised your grades, and if you continue putting in that same effort, I'm confident your algebra results will climb right up there too.
It links the success to the potential improvement, makes it feel like a continuation, not a contradiction.
That feels much more encouraging, like the sergeant getting cadets to cut their hair indirectly.
Sergeant Kaiser, yeah.
Yeah.
Masterful. He didn't order haircuts. He gathered the cadets, called them leaders, said examples. Then he mentioned he was getting his haircut and suggested they look in the mirror and decide if they needed one to be a good example.
So he framed it as their decision, based on their leadership role. Indirect, but effective, completely. Okay, next step in correction. Principle 3. Talk about your own mistakes first, before pointing out theirs. Why? It builds immediate rapport and humility. It shows you're not perfect either, that making mistakes is human. It makes your feedback feel less like judgment and more like shared experience.
Andrew Carnegie used this with his secretary, Josephine.
Yeah. Before suggesting how she could improve, he'd tell her about his own asinine mistakes and blunders when he was her age. It leveled the playing field, made her more receptive. Prince von Bülow did this to survive, critiquing the German church. Kaiser admitted his own ignorance first, before defending his actions.
Smart politics. Okay, what about the way we give instructions or corrections? That's principle 4. Ask questions instead of giving direct orders. Orders often provoke resistance, just on principle. Questions invite cooperation. How does that work in practice?
Think about Ian MacDonald, the manager facing that impossible deadline. He didn't just order everyone to work faster or longer. He brought them together and asked questions.
Like, is there anything we can do to handle this? Or what different ways could we process this?
Exactly. Using we, asking for their input. It shifted the dynamic. The employees felt consulted, empowered. They came up with the solutions themselves and took ownership of making that impossible deadline happen because it was their plan.
Makes sense. People support a world they help create. Finally, in this corrective section, a crucial point about dignity. Absolutely critical. Principle 5. Let the other person save face. Never humiliate someone, even when correcting or letting them go. Public shame creates deep wounds and destroys loyalty, like the General Electric example with Charles Steinmetz.
Yeah, Steinmetz was a brilliant engineer, but failing as a department head. Instead of just demoting or firing him, which would have been humiliating, they created a new, prestigious title for him, consulting engineer.
Exactly.
It allowed him to step aside from management gracefully, retain his status and dignity, and still contribute his genius to the company. Everyone won. The CPA firm firing seasonal workers did something similar. Praised their work on tough assignments, assured them of the firm's continued belief in them, even while letting them go. They left feeling respected.
So, correction is possible without resentment if you start with praise, are indirect, admit your own faults, ask questions, and always let them save face.
That's the framework. It's about respecting their dignity and desire for importance, even while addressing the issue. Hashtag 4.2, inspiring improvement and loyalty.
Okay, now for the final set of leadership principles. These seem focused more on motivation, growth, and building that long-term loyalty.
Exactly.
Moving beyond just correcting mistakes to actively inspiring people to be their best. It starts with principle 6. Praise the slightest improvement and be specific. Be hearty in your approbation and lavish in your praise. Don't wait for perfection. Praise the progress. Absolutely. Jess Lair's quote is perfect. Praise is like sunlight to the warm human spirit. We cannot flower and grow without it. Yet so often we focus only on the flaws. Like the singing teacher who almost crushed Caruso's career by telling him he couldn't sing.
Terrible. Contrast that with Charles Dickens, whose whole life trajectory changed because he got encouragement after publishing just one story. Small praise can have huge impacts. John Ringlespaugh used this to stop his kids from yelling. He just started actively looking for any small positive behavior to praise, and eventually the positive crowded out the negative.
Focus on what you want to see more of. Okay, what's next for inspiration? This one is about shaping identity. Principle 7. Give the other person a fine reputation to live up to. What does that mean exactly? Tell them they're great, even if they're not yet.
Sort of. It means seeing the potential in them, articulating their best possible self, and framing your expectations around that. You give them a standard to aspire to, a reputation they'll want to protect.
Like Henry Hank, the service manager, with the struggling mechanic.
Yeah. Instead of criticizing the mechanic's sloppy work, Hanky told him he was considered an excellent mechanic who clearly took pride in good work. He essentially gifted him a positive reputation.
And the mechanic started living up to it.
Apparently so. He didn't want to disappoint that positive image. The story of Georgette LeBlanc and Marie the dishwasher is even more dramatic.
The servant girl who seemed unremarkable.
Yes, LeBlanc looked past the surface and told Marie she saw treasures within her. Just that phrase, that belief expressed, ignited something in Marie. She transformed herself physically, socially, eventually married the chef's nephew and announced, "I'm going to be a lady." A reputation to live up to changed her life.
Incredible. Okay, reputation. How else do we encourage growth? By making it seem achievable. Principle 8. Use encouragement. Make the fault seem easy to correct. Don't overwhelm them with the scale of the problem.
Exactly. If something looks too hard, people give up. Think of the dance instructor. Even if the student was clumsy, the instructor kept praising his natural sense of rhythm.
Focusing on an innate positive, giving hope.
Right. It gave the student encouragement, made him feel like improvement was possible, even easy. The story of David, the kid struggling with math, is another great example.
His father didn't just drill him.
No, He made it fun, turned flashcards into a timed game, celebrated every tiny improvement in speed, praised David's natural ability. He made learning feel easy and achievable.
And David ended up doing well in math and science.
Yep, got a B in algebra, won a science fair award, all because the task was reframed from a difficult chore into an easy-to-win game.
Okay, encourage, make it seem easy. What's the final leadership principle? It feels like it ties everything together. It really does. Principle 9. Make the other person happy about doing the thing you suggest. This is about aligning the task with their own desires, particularly that core desire for importance. How do you make someone happy about doing something, especially if it's something they were previously failing at?
You find a way to make the task itself fulfill their need for significance. Gunter Schmidt's solution for the employee who kept messing up price tags is genius.
She was clearly negligent, right?
Yes, consistently. Firing seemed likely. But Schmidt, applying this principle, did the opposite. He promoted her.
Promoted her for doing a bad job. He gave her the new title, Supervisor of Price Tag Posting for the entire store. He made the very task she was failing at the source of her new status and importance. And she suddenly started doing it perfectly.
Flawlessly. The new title, the responsibility, the feeling of importance, it made her happy to do the job right.
Yeah.
It's about framing the request so it delivers a benefit they value, letting them save face, and tapping into that desire to be significant.
Wow. That's a masterclass in turning a situation around.
It really is. It shows how understanding these deep human drivers allows for incredibly effective leadership.
So looking back at all these principles, from handling criticism to making friends, persuading, leading, it's incredibly comprehensive, isn't it?
It really covers the gamut. Think about it. The same core ideas apply whether you're dealing with, hardened criminals rationalizing their actions, temperamental opera singers like Chaliapin trying to land huge business deals, or just improving relationships within your own family.
It's all rooted in understanding that fundamental human psychology.
Exactly. And these aren't just abstract thoughts. The source emphasizes they came from that real-world laboratory of human relationships. They were tested, refined. They represent hard-won insights into how people actually work.
So for you listening, this isn't just theory. It's presented as a practical toolkit, a shortcut almost, to becoming more effective in dealing with people, which, as we established, is that crucial 85% of success. The promise is pretty bold. Mastering these techniques can lead to a richer, fuller, happier, and more fulfilling life. Which brings us to our final thought, that challenge for you to consider. If influencing people positively is, as Rockefeller said, the most valuable skill, and if these rules derived from decades of experience are actually quite simple, things like show appreciation, don't criticize, smile, listen, talk about their interests, make them feel important, appeal to noble motives. If the rules are that straightforward, why are they so hard for most of us, maybe 90% of us, to apply consistently, say 90% of the time? What's the biggest internal roadblock? The source gives a pretty clear hint. It comes down to that fundamental choice. Are we focusing on what we want, or are we genuinely trying to understand and address what the other person wants? That failure to arouse an eager want in the other person, that might just be the single biggest failure point. Something to definitely think about. Are you talking about your agenda, or are you figuring out theirs? That seems to be the core question.